would say that were here earlier. Now, one of the other things we saw up the street here was the TV City, the protest there, and the gates being broken through. You can see that's been secured, and the police have both sides of the entrance completely secured, and the small groups on either side of those officers that have been isolated within those boundaries of those skirmish lines. So again, the police department responding here, LAPD in force, and here they are fending off some of the protesters here off towards the east on Beverly.
So, Gil, would you say it's accurate to say they're not just spreading out now, but we've actually seen a number of people leave the area? Because earlier it looked like a crowd of thousands.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to have my pilot, David Viskovich, continue his orbit here so we can get some shots here. We're getting a little bit of exhaust. But yeah, you're right, Kathy. They have separated the groups pretty good here as you see this incident unfolding. I'm going to come out and give you kind of a tour of what's going on. There's TV City, and as I come down here, Beverly and Fairfax. Now, initially, we were looking at 3rd and Fairfax over here, where that city bus was. A big crowd there that had been pushed away from this area. Now the police have that area secured. One tough spot, let me come over here because I haven't looked at it in a while, but here's one of the other strong points for the protesters. This is 3rd and Edinburgh. This group has been here throughout. They've held their ground, and there is a skirmish line there as well. And as I come back out to a wider shot, you can see the squad cars there that were damaged. One of them set on fire along 3rd Street, and then one final push out here back to Beverly. Sorry for the big push here. A lot of the neighbors here on those neighborhood streets there were concerned for their safety as the crowds were going through that area. But as we continue our orbit, we're going to look at the place where the squad car was set on fire, and we're going to push in there, but I can't really see it right now because we're on the wrong side, but there was a squad car that was set on fire in this area as well.
Yeah, several police cars and squad cars set on fire. Gil, thank you for giving us that perspective of what's happening on Beverly and just down the street on 3rd Street in Fairfax. In that area, all we're seeing now is really one small organized group up against a skirmish line. It seems a lot of the protesters, the hundreds of people we've seen before, either may have gone home, and that the people who are left behind causing this chaos, causing this damage, are the people that Mayor Garcetti were saying, just go home. Gil, we're going to stay with your shot here as we bring in our I-Team investigator, Eric Leonard, on the phone. And Eric, if you're still with us, you know, last night what we saw in downtown LA led to the arrest of more than 500 people. You know, the mayor talking today briefly about how a lot of those people are not even from downtown LA, and a lot of the damage and vandalism that was done were people who don't live in that area. What can you tell us about what you're hearing from your sources?
Hey, good afternoon. All of that will become very, very clear once we get a chance to see the booking sheets for the individuals who were cited in most cases last night and released. Of all those 500 people, only 18 were really locked up in jail on suspicion of some felonies. You heard the mayor reference one for attempted murder. We heard perhaps 2. That had to do with an incident at 6th and Broadway, where the LAPD says someone sped a car through a line of officers that were doing crowd control and ignored shouts from the officers to stop. At one point, an officer fired a foam round at the car, and then another officer drew a handgun and fired 6 rounds. Eventually, the car stopped. The driver was not struck by any gunfire, but was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. So between that individual and a little more than a dozen others, they say they did arrest people for some fairly significant crimes, although the vast majority, well over 500, were cited and eventually released. And as those booking records become available, we'll get some more insight into exactly who was involved. They usually list a city of residence, and that is often helpful in understanding, was this something that was organic from the neighborhoods there, or, like many have speculated, was fueled by individuals who showed up to perhaps do harm rather than protest. As far as the incident going on in the Fairfax district right now, we can tell you that LAPD Chief Michael Moore has now arrived at the scene. He is personally commanding the LA LAPD response there. We know that they are making plans to try to take some significant action to stop this. I mean, this is everything we've seen play out over the last few hours has gone far beyond demonstration in the streets. We've seen patrol cars set on fire, lots of rocks and bottles thrown at officers. We're now hearing 2 officers injured, one of them fairly seriously, and it doesn't take an expert to see that the LAPD was overwhelmed. There were plans in place to manage the crowds from the protest today, provide street closures, give people lots of room to march and demonstrate, but at some point things took a turn that was not completely expected. The LAPD began calling in officers from all over the city to help out. That's why we've seen patrol cars from the San Fernando Valley. We can tell that from the numbers that are printed on the roofs. Those have been some of the ones that were set on fire. About midday today, as indications grew that there would be additional demonstrations tonight, not just in Fairfax, but perhaps also in downtown LA, the LAPD did something pretty unusual, which is to activate its entire detective force. These are investigators who usually work in plainclothes, investigate murders, drug trafficking, human trafficking, you name it, in different parts of the city. They were all told to report to work at 1600 hours, 4 o'clock today, in uniform to provide backup to all of the people you already see on the streets. So there was certainly a concern that protests would develop and there would be a huge need for crowd control all throughout the afternoon and the evening. So the LAPD has lots more people coming in. Gil Davis was showing some video of more squad cars driving down Beverly about 10 or 15 minutes ago. Those were actually sheriff's deputies that have been assembling from sheriff stations around the county to provide help and extra people for crowd control to the LAPD. The sheriffs were reporting some incidents over by the West Hollywood station a little while ago, but those squad cars, and I believe it's about 50 deputies, were brought in to help the LAPD here. As far as the specific plans for managing the Fairfax incident, it's changed from minute to minute. There was talk about an hour ago of trying to make some arrests to try to diffuse the crowd there, because the department had identified a number of people in the crowd they believed were agitating things, perhaps making plans to escalate confrontations with officers. But as the crowd has grown and the damage to the police department's vehicles has increased, it sounds like the department is reevaluating what exactly to do. As you can see from the live aerial pictures, there are crowds that are divided down several city blocks by LAPD officers pushing crowds back on one end, pushing crowds back on the other, and they're trying to sort out which way to push the demonstrators, because the goal right here is to get people to leave on their own and just head out of the area. And if that can happen, great, but in order to do that, everybody has to kind of get the crowd moving in one direction, and because officers are effectively surrounded on both ends of city blocks, that's not such an easy task right now. So when they get some more people there, it sounds like they're going to try to push people in one particular direction, whether that's north, south, east, or west is unclear at this point. And then once that happens, it becomes easier to manage specific areas. You did also see the video, and I know we're rerunning some video from a few minutes ago of dumpsters being pushed down the street. One of the big concerns on the part of the LAPD right now is those dumpsters will be used to build some sort of makeshift barricades that will make it more difficult for any kind of crowd control to take place. One of the other concerns with the police cars being vandalized is whether or not any firearms had been left in those cars that were then taken by people in the crowd, and perhaps folks in the crowd had armed themselves. I don't think that's clear to anyone right now, but that is one of the concerns that's guiding the response from the LAPD right now.
All right, from our investigative unit, Eric Leonard, thank you so much for providing perspective and all that information as it concerns the LAPD. If you're just joining us, it is 5 o'clock. This is our news, and here is the latest. Once peaceful protests have turned violent in the Fairfax district.
So this is a
More than 1,000 people have turned up at a rally following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and what started peaceful soon turned violent. Protesters climbing at a bus, blocking intersections, spray painting cars, and torching police vehicles. And at one point, it looked as though some of them were going to storm Television City next to the Grove.
LA Mayor Eric Garcetti spoke out today at a news conference in an attempt to calm the crowds, asking people to just go home to de-escalate the situation. Here's some of what he had to say today.
When you get folks who won't push back from that and officers who try to push forward, we know that the mayhem can ensue. So I've asked the chief to make sure we step back. If people will not leave unlawful assemblies or areas that are curfewed, of course, that to us says that they are there for a reason other than the exercise of their First Amendment rights, and we can bring the law to bear there. But that is the last step that we need to take.
To those that are creating mayhem, we ask you to take a step back and let those who are fighting for the power to come under injustice take a step back and let those who are protesting in power, let those who are standing and speaking in power, let them do their work.
And the mayor went on to say and ask residents of the city of Los Angeles to not take their anger and frustration out on their own city. The biggest headline, or one of the biggest headlines, announcing a curfew in place for downtown LA beginning tonight at 8 o'clock through 5:30 tomorrow morning.
Let's get up to News Chopper 4 Bravo right now, and Gil Levis. And Gil, we just watched as people shredded and stomped on an American flag. Tell us what's going on.
Kathy, this is really hard to watch. They set it on fire, but the flag wouldn't burn. It did burn a little bit. Now they're shredding it apart. They were stomping on it and spitting on it. This individual here just crumbling it up. They were up onto a construction site here. Let me come out to a wide shot here and show you. They were up on the scaffolding and were thinking about starting that flag on fire, but they decided to do it on the ground, and now the crowd is starting to disperse. This is up Fairfax, just north of Beverly, and a really sad thing to see, our American flag being discredited that way. But here, as I come out to a wide shot, you can see the intersection here where the police have formed. They did put out that squad car. It is completely out, but now a huge task force of officers coming up to this intersection for another face-off. And here you go, the crowd taking off running. They see those officers running. They came around the corner, and some of the group splintering off here and pushing off back towards the east along Beverly Boulevard here. But now the task force here, the officers setting up a skirmish line and pushing people off to the north as well.
All right, Gil, we want to get up. We're going to come back to you in a moment. We want to get up to NBC News Chopper 4 Alpha with Megan Reyes overhead. And Megan, where are you and what are you seeing right now?
Well, right now we are over the 101, the Hollywood Freeway. We do have some civil unrest here along the 101 Hollywood Freeway. This is the Benton Way off-ramp to the southbound side of the 101 Freeway. These protesters were trying to make their way onto the 101 Freeway. You can see LAPD out in full force. We also have the California Highway Patrol. They're trying to peacefully push these protesters back. They want them to be able to go out there and protest in the streets in a safe manner, but getting on the freeway, they're not going to tolerate that. They're going to stop them immediately in their tracks. Now, CHP right now, just moments ago, you see a couple of cars, units passing by here. They may be letting traffic come down. You can see the skirmish line right here. These officers, they are escorting a couple of the other protesters who made it onto the freeway. They're taking them off the freeway right now. Again, this is the 101 southbound at Benton Way. As a result, all lanes were shut down. They were taking some vehicles off at Vermont, and these are the vehicles that are just south of Vermont. You can still see activity right here. Officers walking on the northbound lane. So it's still a hectic scene here along the 101 freeway as they are trying to get these protesters safely off the freeway here in the Echo Park area.
And Megan, how many people would you say are out there protesting? About 100 or more?
Kathy, I'd say there's probably a little over 100, less than 200 people. Not only do you have this big group right here, they're centered here at the off-ramp. That's the Benton Way off-ramp. Also on the overcross, you have a lot of people gathering as more, so word gets around, and this is where some of the protesters are staging. People start heading out in this area. The primary concern for LAPD as well as California Highway Patrol, we saw this behavior earlier, them throwing objects onto the freeway. Now, we haven't seen anybody do that, but they don't want to give any of these protesters the opportunity. That's why they're probably going to try to get them away from this overcross here to protect the people along the freeway below. But you can see people are starting to gather. The good news, they are moving them in a safe manner off of the freeway, and as they do that, they're bringing in these units here to make sure they do not have access and get back onto the 101 and disrupt the traffic, and more importantly, become possible. You know, it's very dangerous getting them on the freeway here, so it's protecting them for their safety as well.
Megan, as we continue to stay with your shot here, we see those protesters not being able to get on the freeway. I can only imagine this is a traffic nightmare that's building.
It is. In fact, let me show you here. I'm going to pull out here from News Chopper 4. If we can kind of move the helicopter here just a little. You can see, let me move the camera here, and I'm going to show you the traffic where it's closed. This is an empty Hollywood freeway. This is the southbound side to the left of your screen. Let me show you what's happening. They're taking all the vehicles off there at Vermont. Look at this backup. It extends out of the Hollywood area on the 101 freeway southbound. So essentially, it is a Saturday. We don't see too much traffic here on the 101 at this time, but because of the closure, you can see all these folks stuck here. They don't know what's going on, but obviously when LAPD and the California Highway Patrol deems it's safe, they'll reopen the southbound lanes, but right now all southbound lanes are shut down. They're trying to get all these people safely off the freeway, and then they'll make a decision whether or not to reopen any of those lanes.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot more people, though, even though it is a Saturday, out on the roads, considering they just relaxed the COVID-19 restrictions. So we're seeing a lot of people out there. We heard the mayor, too, talking about being concerned about all these people being out there and possibly not practicing social distancing, although they are practicing their constitutional rights. They're not always being safe. And he did shut down testing centers today at 3 o'clock because he was worried about that very thing. But again, Megan, you said CHP is assisting in this as they try to get this area back reopened and these people off the road there?
Yeah, you can see California Highway Patrol. They're on the freeway right now. They're being helped with the LAPD. We also have LA City Fire on scene right now. I'm not sure if there's any injuries right now. Maybe that's just a precaution, but here's an ambulance right now. Somebody's staging on scene. They could be tending to somebody. In fact, it looks like they are tending to an individual right here. We don't know the circumstances related to any injury, but LA City Fire attending to at least a couple of people right now. These individuals earlier were on the freeway. They have been safely taken off the freeway, and let me show you where the large group is beginning to gather here just on the overcross. LAPD still restricting access, and look at all these units. Let me just show you all the manpower here. California Highway Patrol, they have at least 2 to 3 dozen vehicles lined up along the freeway along with Los Angeles Police Department. So they heard about this commotion here. Quick action, make their way to this area. You can see officers really just kind of going back and forth right now, going where they're needed. They're assisting the LA City Fire Department to make sure those men and women are safe as they render aid to anybody who needs it. Look at the traffic right now. Starting to see a lot of traffic in this neighborhood here. This is Benton Way. Folks are restricted now to get on the freeway, but again, the concern is that they want to make sure this is orderly protest. People aren't being disorderly and throwing objects onto the freeway. We haven't seen anybody do that, but again, these officers do not want to give any of these individuals the opportunity for the safety of themselves and the people driving down below. All
right, Megan, we will get back to you as soon as we can. We want to get to Robert Kovacic, who's been listening to what the mayor had to say today. Robert, biggest headline, obviously, that downtown LA curfew that he talked about, saying that he wouldn't establish a curfew around the city, but he just wanted some peace to build there in downtown. Robert, what can you tell us?
Oh, Jonathan, that's all about to change. We have been focusing on this area of 3rd and Fairfax, right? That is really just sort of the heart, if you will, as you head from the east to the west side. That's right around the Beverly Center area. That is an area right now that if you live west of there, you heard the mayor talk about a curfew at 8 o'clock at night for downtown Los Angeles.
Pull the audio too.
In the rush to get on here, I'm going to put on my mic and make sure it didn't fall off again. But in the rush to deal with this situation, right now, we are looking at 3rd and Fairfax. If you live west of this area, 3rd and Fairfax, keep in mind that the curfew that just was applied for downtown Los Angeles that begins tonight at 8 o'clock, it is probably within the next minutes going to apply to you. Just talk to city leaders in Beverly Hills. Any minute right now, it's going to be ordered an 8 p.m. curfew for tonight. That means you're not leaving your house. And now also in West Hollywood, just spoke with Mayor Lindsay Horvath. She said as well, West Hollywood, that's the city that is just directly west of the area that you're looking at right now, an 8 o'clock curfew is going to be applied. Why is this the case? Well, ever since last night, when I got home at 3 a.m. yesterday and I started looking at social media, I saw the trends, and it was, we're heading west tomorrow. We're going west tomorrow. The plan was to hit the Grove, start protesting there, and then move into Beverly Hills, specifically Rodeo Drive. Beverly Hills leaders tell me right now that they have had graffiti, they have had pockets of protesters in that area, and that is one of the reasons that they're planning for this 8 o'clock curfew. So if the idea was for these protests that erupted last night in downtown Los Angeles to now head west and to keep going into the west side, then this is why these curfews are going to be put into place. So you're hearing this for the first time. It is just breaking. Let's make it official now with the mayor of West Hollywood, Lindsay Horvath. Lindsay, it's Robert. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, Lindsay, I'm telling my viewers the truth here, right? We're going to have an 8 p.m. curfew in West Hollywood tonight?
Yes, that's correct. We are going to issue an executive order that's imminent from our city manager, who is empowered to issue this order. There will be a curfew this evening. I've already spoken with a handful of business owners to advise them of this, who have reached out to me to ask questions. So, yes, we are making sure that our community remains safe, and we want to make sure that everyone is protected and staying safer at home.
Lindsay, no doubt you have heard what the LAPD, what the Sheriff's Department has been tracking about these pockets of protests moving towards the west side as we enter into West Hollywood and other areas. Have you been prepared for this all along today? And what are the preparations you're making?
Yes, we have. Our staff has been prepared. The Sheriff's Department has been prepared. I was personally present from 12 to 1 at Pan Pacific Park. The protesters there were peaceful. They were organized, and they were very clear in what their purpose was. It was not about creating violence or any sort of destruction. It was clearly about a response to what happened in Minneapolis, and that makes sense to me. Right now, we have people who are trying to dovetail onto what their action was, who are creating problems in our community, and that is what is causing the curfew in our community. Our city manager is in constant contact with the Sheriff's Department and our Public Safety Department. We will continue to remain vigilant of all action that's happening in the community to keep people safe.
And Mayor Horvath, when you think about tonight and what you said to me a little while ago, is that you are asking all businesses in West Hollywood and everyone, let's mark this day down. This was the day, Mayor Horvath, when so many businesses in West Hollywood were finally going to open up. And this right now, you are saying, West Hollywood, not yet. You need to keep your businesses closed for this evening.
Yes, we heard yesterday morning from the governor that he had communicated with LA County and the LA County Department of Public Health that some businesses may be able to open. That was an LA County Department of Public Health order. That was not through the city of West Hollywood. We waited, and I think the protocols came down at about 6 p.m. last night. But given what's going on, we want to make sure that we take a little bit more time, we get those protocols in place, and most importantly, we keep everyone safe with everything that's going on the ground right now. We know that there are protesters in West Hollywood who seem to be peaceful, who are expressing, as the First Amendment allows them, their peaceful right to protest. But we do know that some people are trying to take advantage of this situation and cause harm and cause unrest and danger to folks in our community. And so to the extent that people are able, we're asking them to stay home, to stay safer at home. If you are not safe at home, Peace Over Violence and other organizations are available to you. But we do want folks to know that we are monitoring the situation as it happens.
You know, Mayor, it gets a little complicated here when these protesters, if they do decide to head into the west side of Los Angeles as promised. You've got West Hollywood, where your jurisdiction is the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Then one city over you at Beverly Hills, you have the Beverly Hills Police Department. Then, you know, surrounding all of that, the LAPD takes over. So are you coordinating with all of these agencies together right now as we head into tonight? And will we see a visible police deputy presence on these streets?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, the original protest and action began in Pan Pacific Park, which is the LAPD region. Initially, the unrest began in LAPD's region. They called in for the Sheriff's Department backup, and our Sheriff's Department responded at the request of LAPD. It is something that we're continuing to monitor, and the details continue to change moment to moment, as you might imagine, but we are prepared to help keep people safe. Most importantly, we want everyone to know that West Hollywood staff, West Hollywood Public Safety Department, we want to make sure that everybody stays safe, and we're encouraging everyone to stay at home.
And Mayor Horvath, before I let you go, we have curfews in place now. Seattle, Pittsburgh, Columbus, Chicago, they're getting into place now, and especially when you look at Minneapolis, where there was a curfew in place last night. Well, the curfew didn't matter. People still took to the streets. What is going to be the response if people don't abide by that 8 o'clock curfew in West Hollywood tonight?
Look, I personally understand that there are many situations ongoing, and there are many feelings, understandably so, in response to what has happened over the course of this past week. I support people's right to peacefully protest. I support people's right to speak up and speak out about the injustice that is happening, and I think that's why people gathered originally at Pan Pacific Park today. I support that, and I believe people need to speak up and speak out and call out the racism that's happening in communities, not only in Los Angeles County, but throughout the country. We need to call that out, we need to name it, and we need to do something about it. That's very important. But for people who are trying to take advantage of a situation to cause harm, to cause destruction, that's not what we're asking for, and that is not what I heard from the protesters who organized today. And so we do have everyone in place to be able to protect our community, to protect our residents, and to keep people safe.
Mayor Horvath, thank you very much. We are speaking, and we want to thank Mayor Lindsay Horvath of the city of West Hollywood. This is the city directly adjacent to the area right there at 3rd and Fairfax. As you heard here for the first time, West Hollywood curfew, 8 o'clock tonight. We are expecting Beverly Hills. They have told me that's going to happen any second now, and Beverly Hills will also have an 8 p.m. curfew, and you can then expect everything post that, or everything west of that, to also find that 8 o'clock curfew. That's the best place to be, is tonight. Talking to my producers, do you want to toss to the mayor's? We're gonna hear from Mayor Garcetti a little bit later, and also we're gonna hear from more people about the protests that are going on right now, about the curfews that are in place throughout Los Angeles. For now, let's go back to you, Jonathan and Kathy.
All right, you got it, Robert. Thank you so much. The mayor of West
We did have
that they will also have a curfew starting at 8 o'clock. We assume that will go till 5:30 in the morning, the same as Mayor Eric Garcetti's curfew for the downtown area, now expanding as protesters move west. We want to show you, we have 2 choppers in the air right now to bring you full coverage, News Chopper 4 Alpha and News Chopper 4 Bravo. We're going to start with Gil Levis. He is in News Chopper 4 Bravo. He has been covering that hotspot in the Fairfax district, where right now we are seeing police and protesters. Gil, what's happening here?
Now you're looking at Fairfax and Oakwood Avenue, where the protesters have moved north. The LAPD pushed the crowd to the north here from Beverly, and you can see a mobile task force of officers setting up a skirmish line there along Oakwood. But as I come out to a wide shot, that crowd is growing here as they push to the north. This is just south of Fairfax High School, and you see both sides. Actually, there was a blocking force here on the other side. It looks like they've broken that down a little bit. One thing that I'm noticing is the vehicles that are on this street. I did notice that the vehicles aren't so much commuters kind of trying to get through here, but there are protesters' vehicles. We've watched protesters jump in and out of vehicles as the LAPD moves through the area, and some of these vehicles are support vehicles, meaning that they have water to give to the crowd. That's the latest in News Chopper 4 Bravo. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
All right, Gil, thank you. We have the fortune of having LA Sheriff Alex Villanueva on the phone with us right now. Alex, we can only imagine that you are very busy right now. We just want to ask you about how your department is assisting the LAPD and with what's going on right now.
Well, our main concern is definitely in the Fairfax district, and we got a call requesting assistance from the LAPD, so we are definitely helping them out there. We have 3 or 4 other areas throughout the county that we're paying attention to, but right now, obviously up in Beverly Hills, West Hollywood area, Fairfax district, those are our concerns.
And how many officers will you send out right now? Do you do it in waves as it's needed?
We do it by mobile field forces in platoons, so they're groups of anywhere from 45 to 100 at a time, or even smaller groups of squads, about 22 per squad, and depending on the size of the problem is how many teams will send in their direction.
Gil, in addition to the curfew, Sheriff Villanueva, in addition to the curfew that we heard announced in downtown LA tonight, we heard the mayor of West Hollywood announcing, a curfew in their town as well. Obviously, a city that you guys patrol. How will that be enforced?
Well, it's enforced on a case-by-case basis, and most people, we look for voluntary compliance. If they're not part of the problem, we're not going to worry about it. But what it does is a curfew gives us a tool to take people out of the scenario. If they're part of the problem, they're contributing to the lawlessness, the easy way to get people out of the problem. Same thing when we do a order to disperse and people fail to adhere to that. And so this is a tool in our tool bag.
And this is your home. What is your reaction to what we're seeing today?
Well, it's disheartening to see this because this is our home for all of us. So at the end of the day, in the next morning, people wake up with a headache and their own homes are trashed. Their businesses are trashed. These are jobs that get lost. And I remember as a young deputy working throughout the 92 riots, a lot of those businesses that were burned down never came back. And those were owned primarily by people of color. And it's just a loss locally. And to think that you have the Antifa, the anarchists that come to town just to have fun at our expense, people should take offense to that.
And Sheriff, can you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, we've seen every day these protests since Wednesday start off peacefully and end in these kind of violent acts, the vandalism, the looting, the setting of fires in police vehicles. How much of the bad stuff, the violence that we've been seeing is separate from the peaceful protests as they start off? What can you tell us about that?
Well, definitely the majority of people come to protest peacefully, and they're marching, they have their signs, and they respect the rule of law, and we want them to do that. In fact, we encourage people to do that, and we're going to support their efforts to do that because everyone needs to be heard the right way. And their sole goal is to plant the seeds of chaos, anarchy throughout the community, and they have no concern about George Floyd. They have no concerns about police brutality. They couldn't care less about that. Their whole idea is to revel in lawlessness and to have a party at our expense. And I think everyone should take offense to them and make sure that our own kids, the ones that are protesting on behalf of Black Lives Matter, any organized protest, recognize that there's people amongst their ranks that are not there for a noble purpose, and they need to be outed.
Absolutely. Sheriff Villanueva with us here on the phone as we continue to monitor what's happening in the Fairfax district. We heard that there were more than 500 arrests made last night, Sheriff, in the downtown area. Are you able to, and the Mayor Garcetti kind of alluded to it a little bit, how many of those people were not even from downtown LA initially?
It apparently was a sizable group. We had a good tally up north I believe in Portland, where almost the entire crowd that was arrested was not from the area. And we've had people here. In fact, the gentleman that fell off the radio car in the highway patrol on the 101 on the very first day, he was from out of town. So that tells you the people that show up here, they're opportunists. They're driving in, they're caravanning, they're even taking Uber to these protests, and for only one purpose. And we definitely need to make sure that they stop.
And you're in charge of officers. What do you tell them? There's so much anger that is presented to law enforcement, and some of it not rightfully so. What do you tell officers that are in your command?
Well, we want to tell them, first of all, we want to assist the public and be able to protest peacefully. We want to respect everyone's First Amendment rights. We will be the first in line to support their amendments rights, and we want to make sure that everybody does it within the rule of law. And so as long as they're not vandalizing, they're not creating a traffic hazard like going onto a freeway, for example, God bless them. Keep doing what they're doing, and we'll be there shoulder to shoulder with them in support, and we share in their outrage.
And Sheriff, at what point do these officers and these deputies of yours, have to, they've been showing incredible restraint at times, and at times we've seen officers and deputies skirmish with protesters. At what point do they have to kind of cross that line? I can imagine a fine line to cross. I mean, it's hard to balance that.
Well, it is a delicate balancing act, but most people who are law-abiding citizens that come to protest, they adhere to the directions given to them by the deputies and the police officers. The ones that hang around and that loiter around and keep circling back, they don't have any interest in that. They're there for another purpose. Those are the ones that we're going to spend most of our time and our energy on, and they're professional vandals in essence.
And the mayor says he would really like to keep this curfew to one night. He talked to the governor. He does not want to call in the National Guard at this point. He said this is not 1992, although we have seen people draw a lot of parallels to that, saying, we can't believe we're still here. How confident are you that we will take care of this with a one-night curfew?
I'm fairly confident. I share the mayor's confidence because we have a lot more resources still in reserve that we have not used, and they're all ready to be deployed and add to the people that we already have formed together in the partnership we have with not only LAPD, but we've also used mutual aid for surrounding small municipal police departments that are also assisting in this endeavor. So we can make this just a one-night deal and get back to business of cleaning up the city come tomorrow morning, and hopefully that's how it's going to work out.
Sheriff, are you hearing anything about further protests? And again, the protests not necessarily concerning the most people. It's the violent acts afterwards that have been the most concerning. I mean, we're seeing images right now on our screen of police officers having to protect firefighters who just put out a fire. I mean, it's unreal to see these images. Are you hearing of future protests in the coming days?
Well, we have people that are listening on all the different avenues and gathering intelligence on protests. So we were aware of, for example, Beverly Hills, the Fairfax district today, and if there is other things, I won't divulge them, but we'll be prepared for whatever comes our way.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're very busy, and there is a lot going on right now. But this has been LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva. Thank you once again for joining us on the air and giving us your perspective.
You got it. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sheriff.
All right, we're going to go back to Gil Leyva. He's in News Report for Bravo, and he has more on these fire trucks that are there now and the fire that was just put out.
Kathy and Jonathan, the fire department got a call of a structure fire here, 7900 block of Beverly Boulevard with In fact, we moved over here just before they got here, and it looked like rubbish or some sort of trash on fire in the center of the street, and some of the protesters were fueling the fire with more debris until the fire department got here. And you saw, like Jonathan was mentioning, the LAPD having to escort the fire department in here with guns drawn, less lethal guns drawn, pointed at the protesters as the fire department, so that they could do their job and put out that fire. Now they're starting to leave. A large group here has gathered because of that fire, but off to the north here, up off of Fairfax and Oakwood, we saw just a few minutes ago this group here break off and start chasing a couple of the unmarked police cars down Oakwood Street this direction here. They chased them about a block and a half, the vehicles in reverse, trying to get away from the crowd throwing objects at those officers as they fled backwards in reverse in their vehicles. So a very hostile crowd there for that moment in time, but the LAPD is still continuing to push the crowd north on Fairfax towards Fairfax High School.
Gil, you've been giving us this incredible vantage point over the last couple of hours and incredible reporting on your end. Things have changed dramatically. I mean, we saw organized protests earlier. Now it just seems there are people everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. So it goes back into the groups as they are pushed away. They splinter off in different directions. This is a good example in this intersection, going off to the north and off to the west. Some people moving into the neighborhoods here, and it's causing some concern for the residents. But mostly the crowds are sticking to Fairfax, but we're seeing them branch off in so many different directions off of Beverly. They moved off to the east earlier as they broke into TV City, or tried to break in through the gates of TV City, but here's the group marching up north on Fairfax right now as they continue to push through. Again, the vehicles that are trapped in here, some of them are civilian vehicles, some of them are support vehicles for the protesters.
Yeah, we have seen that. We've seen a number of support vehicles. We know that because they drive up and they're handing water. I mean, this all started as what was supposed to be a peaceful rally, and certainly a majority of people are there wanting this to be a peaceful rally, simply holding signs. And then, as the sheriff was talking about and the mayor, you just have a few people who turn it around and start with the violent acts, and then that engages the police, and there you start with the skirmish. So it's what we've seen all day, and we're seeing a lot of debris there in the streets, and a lot of people just taking the opportunity to pull out their phones and use it to take photos to document the event. Social media playing such a big role in all of this, and people able to get information right away.
Kathy, 2 of the 3 squad cars that were set on fire, we saw that happening. The people posing in front of those burning vehicles, and people around them with their cell phones taking pictures for whatever purposes, maybe to put on social media. But we saw that repeated several times here as those 3 officer vehicles.
Switched over to a wireless Bluetooth headset. So again, Gil, this is a curfew starting at 8 o'clock on the West Coast, which would be at the same time we would be 2 hours into our curfew on the East Coast. So we are about 30 minutes away from being on a curfew on the East Coast. So here we do see a protester confronting about 15 officers, all loaded with foam batons. No camera on that guy, so he's not considered media. He is considered to be part of an unlawful gathering. So just pull out your phone and just record. If you do feel like you need to be here, just remember that. We do have tear gas being deployed on the center of the screen there. Cans are rolling out. We have somebody tossing a can back. We have a couple pepper balls being deployed at the center of the screen there. We do have a Molotov, looks like. Tear gas being deployed and being kicked back, being thrown back. Yeah, I'm not sure why that tear gas left a yellow trail. We do have an APB put out on the male with a white t-shirt. Huh? Ooh, we got something deployed in the center there. Throwing something. Flashbang.